Everybody, how are you doing? I'm actually very surprised that so many people showed up. It's a Saturday morning. Who's feeling exhausted? Everybody? That's great. I have good news for you because I have a lot of nice listening samples for you. So while I'm playing them, you can just close your eyes, close your phone, and let your inner cinema take over. So let me start. We're going to talk about storytelling. And storytelling has been around since pretty much the beginning of language, the beginning of humanity. It's what people are using to teach and learn and to make sense of the world. And this is still true today because, like we all know, like if we listen to a good story, it's captivating. Like we can't stop, we binge watch. So yeah, it's still very powerful. Today I will show you some storytelling techniques that you can use, and we're going to focus on audio podcasting, but these are also things that you can apply in video and text as well. Um, so the listening samples that I'm bringing to you, we will first listen to each of them, and then I'll give you a little analysis, like what kind of elements they're using in these episodes, and show you how you can also use these. So I have a few travel podcasts, and then I have a topical podcast, like it's about health, and then one about business, and also like the most common thing is usually conversational podcasts. So we're also going to look at that, and I'm going to teach you some interview techniques, or I'm going to show you some interview techniques that you can use to make even these more narrative. So, like I said, I don't have too many slides. Just at the end, I have like a summary with all the key elements. So while I'm talking, you can really just listen to these samples, close your eyes, close your phone, and be immersive, and then you really get the full experience. So let's start with a travel podcast. Who has been to Paris? Right, Paris is one of the most traveled travel destinations in the world, I would say. And who has traveled to Paris and hasn't been to the Louvre? Oh, quite a few. Okay, surprising. Well, this is again like one of the main sites, and also Paris has these bucket list items that everybody wants to see there. So it's pretty hard to make a travel podcast episode about Paris because what do you say? Like everybody has been there. It's pretty difficult to come up with something original. And my first listening sample is from one of the best storytelling podcasts out there, from This American Life. I'm sure many of you have listened to this. So yeah, let's listen for the next 2 minutes. Right. So I guess you can see what the narrator is doing here. Um, Instead of taking us sightseeing, he's taking us to meet this slightly weird guy. And this guy is actually famous. He's a best-selling New York Times best-selling author from the US, and he's been living in Paris for a long time. So already this character is kind of intriguing and interesting. And then they use some pretty unusual angle, like instead of, again, like visiting all the museums, they go on this hunt for like body parts, and you'll be like, okay, this is weird. Like, what's gonna come next? Like, you wanna know this guy's story. Like, what is he doing there in Paris? Who is this guy, and why is he into body parts? It's very weird. And then yeah, so unusual angles, famous protagonist. This is something that's very useful, very powerful. And then there's something else that they're doing here, which maybe some of you noticed. They use ambient sound, so they actually go to the location and record the sound which is present there. And you'd be surprised, like even in a room that sounds completely silent, you will still hear sound, and you can use the sound for background. And this is pretty not very difficult to do. So you can use like a half decent phone, or you can get like a not too expensive recorder to do this while you're traveling. And also music. They're using music here as an element of adding some ambience and some suspense as well. So the next the next example which I have comes from a fellow nomad. Maybe some of you remember him. He was here last year, Palebo. He's doing the Radio Vagabond podcast, which was elected the travel podcast of the year this year. And I would like to show you again like some scenic elements, some ambience elements which he's using to make his story more immersive. And then I have picked this example to also show you something that, or tell you something that is not working so well in this particular episode. So first let's listen.
We've arrived to the forest. It's 7.
So again, you see what he's doing here. He's using ambience. He's using a scenic element, like a story that's already built into his trip, like meeting these women. They're embarking on this gorilla trek. It's a little bit of a suspense element, like, are they really gonna see gorillas now, or are they gonna like just walk through the jungle and nothing happens? So this like induces listeners to want to keep listening. And actually, this is not how this episode starts, and this is maybe the element that did not work so well. So I have a documentation for my presentation. You can actually watch, listen, listen to all the samples that I'm presenting today in full, so you will see what I'm talking about. So this episode doesn't start here. It actually starts with the author being picked up from his hotel, and then it's about 10 minutes. Like they go there, they eat something. So this is actually it's a bit lengthy. It's a bit taking away from the experience. So if you do something like this, then it's better to dive in directly into what you're doing and start with your most interesting scene. So again, here we have ambient sound and we have scenic elements. And this is something that even in topical podcasts you can use. Like, for example, many people talk about health and wellness, or they talk about financial things. So I want to show you another example where this is done. This example comes from the BBC, from a podcast called Inside Health. And in this episode, they're talking about intermittent fasting and see how they do it. Okay, these were actually two samples. I was supposed to stop in the middle. I'm sorry. So the first thing they're doing here is they are pinning a very hip wellness-related topic to something surprising, which is an age-old religious tradition of people who have been doing fasting for centuries. So again, it's an unusual angle. It's a surprise element. And then the method they're using here, they're going somewhere where this is happening, and then they're getting statements from people. This method is called vox pop. So, you know, for example, if you're in a conference like this and you want to talk about a certain business aspect, you can just find the people that are engaged in this kind of stuff, and then you just get a really short statement from them, and then you patch it all together. You add some ambience to your episode, and then it's already more interesting than just having an expert on the program who's like, you know, sharing the knowledge with the host, for example. And then the second thing the author is doing here, he's doing a self-trial. And this is also a common method of storytelling for a lot of topical things, like okay, so what does this actually feel like? So let me try and experience this myself. And then he takes the listener through the journey. Yeah, so you can do this with many many topics. And then the next example, which I have, is a whole podcast made out of the own journey of the narrator. So he's on a journey to start a podcast business. And this is actually, again, one of the most famous storytelling podcasts out there. It's called Startup, and let's listen.
I'm Alex Bloomberg. For a long time.
So what we have here, they're working with what is called a story arc. So the story arc, there are many different ones, but the one that's one of the most common ones is called the hero's journey. So the hero goes on a quest. He has to overcome some challenges. There's a mini conflict built in here, which is about the shoes, which is also a bit of a funny element. And then throughout this podcast, and I would encourage you to listen to all the episodes because you can see like there's this overarching story arc, and there's mini story arcs built into every episode. And this is very much like all the series that we're watching, like video series, TV series, how they're also made. Like they get us hooked to binge watch and to want to know more. So this happens. I mean, this works with audio as well. And then the last thing I would like to show you is a conversational podcast. So this is the most common thing. You can also include some ambient sound and some background noise into that because I mean we all travel, we bring back stories from where we go. And again, if you take a recorder with you, it's very simple to just record a little bit of ambience. So I want to talk about interview techniques here, or like how a host is supposed to lead through an episode. And I would like to tell you some issues that came up with this episode. But let's listen, and I'll tell you in a minute.
It's an oil made with
Okay, I'm gonna stop it here because I'm otherwise running out of time. But what happens next is that the host kind of comes with some really generic comments about, oh, this is such an intense story, something like that. So what I wanted to show you here is like it's very important if you have a guest on your show that like preparation is key. You need to know what this guy is going to talk about. And I would say like 2/3 of a conversational podcast or any podcast for that matter is preparation and editing. And only 1/3 or even less happens while you're actually recording it. And what the host is doing here, he's like, this guy is like a really gifted writer, like the way he's narrating his story. But then the host comes in and he has these really generic comments like, oh, it's such an amazing story, and how, oh, it's such a human experience. So he actually takes away from the listening experience, like he makes it weaker by doing this. So if you do conversational podcasts, I would very much encourage you to learn a little bit about interview techniques. And this is something you can learn. It's not a secret. It's there's material on it. So a good thing you can do is like to help your guest dive deeper into the story. How do you do this? Like good questions are open questions that cannot be answered with yes and no. Questions that focus on the how and why, because this is where you really get deep. Right, what else? Yes, and then just be empathic, listen to what your guest has to say, and don't just stick to your script, but like, you know, be flexible and take it from how the conversation is going. Okay, then I'm pretty much done. Here are some key takeaways, if anyone wants to take a photo. And then these are the listening samples. And if you get in touch with me, I will send you the whole documentation of this talk. Thank you very much.